Hello, I'm Rick Hertless, founder of His Gospel Power. Thank you for joining with our program as we look into the book of 1 Timothy. We're in the 5th chapter. We're coming near the end of 1 Timothy, and of course we will continue on and go on into 2 Timothy. We like to continue to try to take the Word of God in its entirety as far as each individual book goes, and of course in its entirety with the Scripture as well. And we are now looking for this week and last week. We're basically looking at the elderly and how we are to treat the elderly and how they have been treated and how they are discarded and discounted these days. Before we get too much into today's discussion, please go to hisgospelpower.org. Click on the donate button or the contact us button. And thank you so much to all of those who do support our program through your prayers and through your financial support. All right, so now we're in 1 Timothy 5:15, and we talked about earlier the younger women that are widows that have that needed to remarry, that needed to start a new family because they were young enough. Their husband died, whether it had been from who knows what, it could have been anything back then, whether it had been in battle or just a disease or whatever. They died young enough where the women were young enough that they could still bear children, and they could remarry. And he says in 5:15, he says the reason he's giving them all of this instruction is because he says, for some have already turned aside after Satan. So in other words, they're allowing their flesh to take over, just like we discussed yesterday. And instead of going back in and getting married, they're just maybe it's very possible. And it's like Ron was saying earlier in the week, we're still the same people. We still have the same desires. Really not much has changed anatomically for each one of us. And these younger women, possibly after their husband has died, well, look, I want to go out and party. I've been tied down all this time. I'm going to go out and party. That is highly possible, even probable, that those things were happening. And that's what Paul is addressing, a problem here. Paul is not writing this just because he is addressing things that can happen, that he's giving instruction to Timothy and trying to tell him how to handle these situations that come up. And this is a situation Paul has seen come up, so he's giving Timothy the wisdom to be able to address this in the church that Timothy has been placed over, the church body. Well, so he's saying that he's seen this happen before, so he's trying to give that instruction to make sure that it does not happen, because we are to follow Christ in the way and be Christ-like, in the way that Christ wants us to be. And so that's what he's trying to do here. He's making the point of saying, look, some of these have already fallen for all of this. They're not doing what Christ would want, and that is to continue in the way of Christ. That is what he's really trying to say here. And so I'm going to, I'm not even going to get into 16 yet. I'm going to turn it over to Ron Stortle.
When you were reading that, verse 15, I was thinking about the way you were reading it and the words that are used there. And then I was thinking back to what you said about the concept of Paul possibly being married and his wife may have left him. Thinking about, from a man's point of view, him saying that, saying, yeah, for some have already strayed after Satan. If he was married and his wife left him, is it possible he was thinking out loud when he said this? Because when you think about Scripture, it says, normally it would say, and they fell into sin, or they went to sin. Mm-hmm. He flat out said, yeah, they go after Satan.
Right.
Maybe he was thinking about about a life scenario.
Maybe he was. Maybe he was thinking that, hey, my wife decided she wanted to go out and party, Now, he gave provisions. Remember, there was provisions given for those that did not want to stay. If somebody was converted, and it was Paul who gave the provision, who told the provision, if somebody is converted and their wife did not want to stay with them, that they were released. Yes. So he does give that. We're given that provision.
Yeah.
So it is quite possible that you're right. It was a life scenario
that he just kind of thought out loud remembering back to something that happened to him.
We've been talking about the elderly all week long, and you mentioned something to me about it in the break. I wanted you to go ahead and bring up that we have talked about in the elderly, but they're being cast aside. And so what are we missing by casting them aside?
And really, it goes into think about the speed of society. What has happened? Our lives have gotten busier. People are working 2-3 jobs. Both spouses are working. Kids are brainwashed on electronic. It's a high-tempo society. And thinking about when I was younger and my grandparents were still around, the times I spent with them, whether I was a little child at their house or went and visited them, with this high-tempo life, when you sit down with, I hate saying elderly, I like saying like seasoned, the seasoned folks, when you sit down with them, because more often than not, they don't have the tempo that we have, just sitting there in a calm atmosphere, spending time with them, that slow pace mentality, you don't even realize the time as it passes. And it really causes you to stop what you're doing and appreciate the moment and to really focus on what they have to offer society. And it's just, when you're done with that, you look at it and go, wow, that was a nice calming experience to slow down your life. And that's what, if you think about it, when you cast the seasoned elderly away, where do we have in society these days to really slow our lives down? But that's what, to me, they give us the opportunity to do, and to push them out of the way. You don't have that anymore. Really the only time we have a time to slow down is when we're forced to, not when we choose to. And we need to get back as a society to those times to create those opportunities to just slow society down and slow life down. And what better way to do it than with those that can still contribute? And that was something else I wanted to say. The elderly still have so much they can contribute to society and wisdom, like you said, that we just need to feed off of that, because so many of them went through in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. They're still, some of them are still around, that we could learn how to avoid a lot of the problems that are in society today by listening to them that went through it.
Exactly. I mean, that's a big thing that I think we're missing, is the wisdom of the elderly. And
yes.
In fact, the problem is, I'm seeing that the young are being lied to in our history. And so they will not, because it was now told by a teacher, it is now put in print. They no longer believe the elderly, that it actually, that we actually know what we're talking about. I mean,
and they're being taught by people that weren't there, that are supposedly subject matter experts.
Right, and they're not, because they're really giving a false truth. I mean, they're not, and for certain they're not giving the entire truth, because the entire truth is, one of the first things in the Communist Manifesto is remove all history. You remove all the history, and then you can write your own history, which is exactly what they're doing right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the strange thing is, right now, they're just tearing down statues. They don't care who it is. I mean, they're tearing down statues of abolitionists. They're saying, oh, well, this is just some old white man. We just need to remove his statue. It's like, no, wait a minute. You're not understanding. This is a guy who supported you and helped you to get out of this situation y'all were in.
I just saw, now this will be a week ago today, they just erected a brand new statue to Lenin in Berlin. A Marxist leader that killed tens of millions of people. They're erecting new statues to communists and tearing down those that built the original America.
You see, that's the danger that we're having here. I mean, they are going to start erecting new statues of who they think are the heroes. They don't have a clue.
And if the only statues left are those then that's all children are going to see, and they're going to think that's history.
Well, and they start talking about how wonderful they were.
Yeah, well,
they already do it. I mean, if you've heard of anybody talking about China and Xi Jinping, many of the millenniums think that Xi Jinping is the cat's whiskers. They think, oh, that guy's got it on going on. Let me tell you something. He's killed hundreds of thousands of people at a whim. If all they've got to do is talk against him a little bit, and they're gone. I mean, they're thrown into camps or they're whatever. The entire families have been wiped out because they are politically disagreeing with him. They're not understanding. That's what was going on with Hitler.
Well, and that's what they don't understand. They all scream they want socialism in America. Socialism, and I'm going to use it under the guise of the coronavirus because their socialism is running the coronavirus pandemic. They just put 40 million people out of work. What does socialism do? It eliminates useless eaters. If you do not have a job and you are not contributing to society, communism, socialism says you are useless.
That's right.
And to get rid of you.
That's right.
What do they think they're going to...
And they put them in working camps is what they put them in.
Or just kill them off.
Or just kill them off. But I mean, effectively, once they put you in a work camp, you're killing them off.
You're not coming out of it.
If they put me in a working camp, I don't know how long I'd survive. I'd either get stronger or I'd die. But I mean, the average American, they put them in a work camp, they have no idea what a work camp is.
Well, imagine a snowflake in a working camp, no matter what age,
Exactly.
20, 30, 40. You put one of these California snowflakes in a working camp, and they've never worked a day in their life.
That's right.
They're going to lose their mind, if nothing else.
And we lose all of that because we don't follow the word. 1 Peter 5:5 says, likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to the elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility. Well, we're not doing that. We're not submitting ourselves to the elders. In fact, we're saying we don't even want you around. We don't want you around us. I mean, our culturally, we are kicking the elders out, and that's been going on for years and years and years. Especially Hollywood, for example. You guys in Hollywood should know this for sure, especially you women, because old women in Hollywood just about can't find a job. They've got to get all of that plastic surgery and the plastic everything so they can try to keep working. Otherwise, they are just put away. They're put out to pasture. Look, you can just go die. We don't care. You're not young and beautiful anymore. You're out of here. And so your looks are very fleeting. And, of course, the Hollywood scenario is, well, then you're old, we don't need you anymore. Now, some of the older men, they still maintain their physical appearance or whatever. Elderly men, are more accepted than the women are. That ought to tell you something.
Well, and think of it. I mean, you mentioned Hollywood and the main Hollywood group. I got one even worse for you. And this is the theme for most middle-class, supposed, spiritual women. Hallmark. How often do you see, and male and female, how often do you see a ugly person in a Hallmark movie?
I don't recall seeing one, so I don't know.
I do see one occasionally, but
they're going to usually be classified as a bum on the street or something like that.
But I mean, just think about it.
They're not going to be the main character most of the time.
How many Christians, how many moral people watch Hallmark for these great love stories?
Right.
Yeah,
the great feel-good movies and everything, but yet it's not really promoting
reality.
Well, it's not promoting the Bible for certain. I mean, of course, Hallmark is not known for its biblical principles anyway. But
they just approve.
At the very least,
they just approve they're going to start having homosexual movies.
That is true.
But just
I was going to say at the very least they were always talking about getting married or whatever, and they weren't. Although that's not necessarily true because I've seen many of them that were just living with their boyfriend. They get tired of him or something. They go off to another little town and they find a new mate or whatever. That's what Hallmark movies usually are.
Yeah, but specifically the image. They're all beautiful people in there, male and female. Even the kids. They don't have any kids that have any ugly features. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, this verse 16 it puts it back on the church as far as what you are supposed to be doing. It should not come all the way down to the church, which, of course, many say, oh, well, the church is socialistic. It's not. It's spiritualistic, for one. It's spiritual. But this is actually proof that, look, it's not a matter of socialism to just let everybody just take care of it, because what this says is, if any believing man or woman has widows, and we're talking about a widow indeed, okay, a widow in need, let them relieve them, and do not let the church be burdened, that it may relieve those who are really widows. So in other words, if you have the wherewithal to take care of a widow, you should do it. You should, and if you're a believing man or a woman that has widows and you have the ability to take care of them, then you should do it. You don't leave it only to the church. You should take care of them if you have the ability to do so.
Yeah, and this specifically says relatives, but that doesn't say only relatives. You could be a family that could take in a widow and fully support them.
Well, mine doesn't say what relatives. It says, if any believing man or woman has widows.
Oh, okay.
Which I guess you could take that as saying relatives. Maybe that's where your translation
mine
says.
does, yeah. Same
I'm
thing
taking it as...
Well, you could, as a church, just take in widows. If you have the ability to take the burden off the church and you can support them, yeah, it works either way.
Right. And so either way, as a believer, if you see somebody in need and you have... Because the Bible also tells us those people who have money are supposed to take care of those who don't. That's what it said. Those believers, that they were given that money for a specific purpose, and that is to help those in the church that are in need.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time that we have. Thanks for joining with our program this week. As we look next week, we will be looking once again at the elderly and how we are to honor our elders and not kick them out, not just say, you know what, we don't need you any longer. Please go to hisgospelpower.org, click on the donate button or the contact us button. Until next time, I pray you receive His gospel power today.
He died for you, He died for me. From our sin, He set us free. He loved us so, His life He gave. So if we ask, we can be saved. He's calling you, He's calling you. Jesus Christ is calling you. If He's touched your heart and soul, then come let Jesus make you whole. Come near with me and we will pray that all your sin be washed away. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. Just come and praise His holy name. He's calling you, He's calling you. Jesus Christ is calling you. If He's touched your heart and soul, then come let Jesus make you whole. If you feel Him touch sins and be renewed. Please don't wait, don't hesitate. For tomorrow may be too late. Oh, come right now. He's calling you.